As you continue, because we don't want the lesson to be too long, because I know people, when the lesson is above 30 minutes, it doesn't even get a like or a view. Not even like a view. So let me just keep it as short as possible. I know I tend to go a little too long concerning the lessons, so I try to keep it as short as possible. Okay, I understand that. So let's continue. It says yes, which let's get the precept first. Let's read from 2 Maccabees chapter 4 and verses 1 coming down to 12. So you can identify what is going into, which you already know, but for those who are listening in. And verses 1, it says, all right, the topic here is with Jason, this ungodly wretch, as literally mentioned verbatim, going lower down. But let's go ahead. It says this is the time of the Greek, as we know, where we were in Hellenization, and many of our people continue to keep the customs and laws and ways of the Greeks, which was given from Antiochus Epiphanes, of course. And of course, there are many of our people, well, a few of our people, which still counts to many, which rebelled against what they were doing because they are stiff, they're steadfast, and they are directly in the ways of Yahweh Shem Yahushai by keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments, the Torah, and having full faith in Him at that time. So there's a separation. There's not separation. There's a separation. One who is against the ways of the Father and one who is for the ways of the Father, which is important to note, especially coming to the New Testament, as to why those who was for the ways of the Father became prideful in that manner and was calling the ones who was against the ways of the Father, their children and the children's children, who are now come up into the world, which is why they was calling them uncircumcision, because they are not doing, they knew not the ways anymore, because of course, generation, the descendants into the Greek customs. Just to be example, let me not stray. So like, there's that for next time. That's going to be a beautiful lesson. I hope you all are there to witness that as well. So it says this Simon now of whom he spake afore, having been a betrayer of the money and of his country, slandered Onias, as if he had terrified Heliodorus, and been the worker of these evil. Thus was he bold to call him a traitor, that he had deserved well of the city, and tended his own nation, and was so zealous of the laws. But when their hatred went so far that by one of Simon's factions murders were committed, Onias, seeing the danger of this contention, and that Apollonius, as being the governor of Seleucia and Phoenice, did rage and increase Simon's malice. He went to the king not to be an accuser of his countrymen, but seeking the good of all, both public and private. For he, again, some context coming, all right? For he saw that it was impossible that the state should continue quiet, and Simon leave his folly, unless the king did look thereunto. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathens. Now, before we continue, you can go into JewishHistory.com or .org as well, not Jewish History and Encyclopedia, proven Hellenization, even with our own people continuing to Hellenize the younger ones, growing them up in Greekish fashions and Greekish customs. And mind you, that place of exercise was no joke. It was some of the most unclean, abominable, defiled things taking place in there. Because for one, what would happen back then is what usually they would be naked. By the way, naked. So you are training up your children to be in that same fashion and mindset. This information is provided in jewishhistory.org. It shows that the gymnasiums and places of exercise, gyms to be exact, were places that facilitated naked people. They were naked as they're born. They of course they had a little covering, but the private was shown in many instances for those who don't know. And many abominable wickedness would have been taking place in these areas. So think about it when it says, read it again. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise, which you know what that is, and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen. Think about the things that would have been taking place in this area with the youths as well. Tainting them, defiling them. Let's continue. It continues, it says, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians, which when the king had granted, and he had gotten into his hand the roll, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashions. And continuing, it again, and we will get a precept to the translation for 12 as well. And the royal privileges granted of special favors to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid. He took away and putting down the governments which were according to the law, he brought up new customs against the law. Verse 12, one of them. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself. That's one. And brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat. Number 2. Let's read it again. He brought up new customs against the law, ... and continuing, 1. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, which is 1. Number 2, and brought the chief young men under his subjection. Number 2. Number 3, and made them wear a hat. Number 3. So for you to make claim that this is not a Greek custom, according to the scriptures, you are lying. Someone here is lying. It's according to law and testimony. As it goes on to say in verse 13, now such was the height of Greek fashions and increase of heathenish manners through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, and no high priest. He made them wear what? Hats. Not this one. This one. Hat. Right. That we get a precept. Bear with me. So again, the same precept in the GNT, verse 12, with great euthanism, with great and slack, my mouth, blah, enthusiasm, Salakia for the pronunciation. He built a stadium near the temple hill and led our finest young men to adopt the Greek custom of participating in athletes' event. So part of the Greek custom mentioned here, verse 12, but as we go into the precept, it says, and brought the chief young men under his subjection and made them wear a hat. That's part of that Greek custom mentioned there. So now let's continue as mentioned here, right here, as it says, right? In the book of 2nd Maccabees, a historical account from the 2nd century BC, written in Greek, the narrative criticizes a Jewish leader, Jason, for adopting Greek practices and encouraging others to do the same, which is why the Hellenization process continued to the point where, at the end of the day, many of our people were called uncircumcision. This is why we are seeing it today. It builds up to it builds up to that. We must understand this. It says, right. One of the changes he introduced was he built a gymnasium, a Greek-style sports and education center near a citadel, I don't know how to pronounce it, in Jerusalem, and induced the noblest of the young men to wear a Greek hat. 1. USCCB link. Right, or I guess different translation renders this in similar ways. Made them wear a Greek hat. Translation in that. I'll continue because we're going to get the next part. I hope I miss it. Right. Induced the most honorable of the trainees to wear the traditional Greek hat. Some version describes adopting Greek customs in the stadium, including clothing associated with Greek athletic culture, which is Bible Hub as well. The links are there. What this means historically, the Greek hats refers to a distinctive Greek headgear, especially worn by athletes or students in Greek gymnasia. Ancient Greek had specific hats or caps, often broad brimmed or clawed styles, linked with Hellenistic dress. Explore the faith. That is next link. Greek customs, including clothing and athletics, were a symbol of Hellenism and were viewed by some Jews at the time as foreign and contrary to Jewish traditions. Jason's promotion of these customs, including the hat, is portraying negatively in the text because it was negative, my guy. Cultural context. Gymnasia was central to Greek culture, places for physical training, education, and social life, much like what we have today. Come on, we have centers, we have universities, we have all these things. Come on. Attire in these places, including headgear, reflected Greek identities and values, because the aim was to keep them away from the traditions and laws and customs. Remember what they say, they broke the holy covenant and would join themselves with the heathen and were sold to the mischief. So this is they literally proceeding to do that. Jason's action in 2nd Maccabees historically reflects Hellenization presses on Jewish society in the 2nd century BC, when many local elites adopted Greek ways, man. Come on. Reference. You can check 2nd Maccabees chapter 14 verses 12. This translation right here. You can Second Maccabees chapter 4 verse 12, gateways, Greek hats, and gymnasium context, Bible gateway. You continue. It says Bible hub, Catholic Bible, Second Maccabees chapter 12 verses 14 verse 12, Greek customs and athletic practices compared, mention. So this by itself, according to history, going back into JW, as well as firstly going back into the JW, JewishEncyclopedia.org, and going to other sources providing the links showing that the hats were part of a Greek custom that was worn by the young Jakes that were Hellenized and pushed into more Hellenization by Jason, one of our people, which exactly referenced what was mentioned in First Maccabees. We'll grab it quick, chapter 1 and verses 11, where it says, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men. And this lines up with what Jason has done, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are wronged about us, for since we departed from them, we had much sorrows. And as you can see, Jason was so happy to join himself with the Greeks to get license and to gain a form of authority over his people, to continue to indoctrinate his people into this foolishness. You do notice that, right? You do notice that. And these customs, which is practiced, legal precept again, Leviticus chapter 18 and verses 19 and verses 28, which was 29, which is shown. Again, let's read it. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the soul that commit them shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore ye shall keep my ordinances, that ye commit not any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, and that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am Yahweh your power. So we're not supposed to defile ourselves with these customs, though in the time of the Greek it was forced upon us, or else we would be put to death according to the scriptures. Right? Let's get one piece of that quick, just to add to that so you could see it yourself. See what I'm going to, right? Read from verses This verse 47. It says, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. That is the reason, the point of it. To the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said that he should die. So what was decreed by the king had to be followed, or else death would have been their way. They would have been unalive for their disobedience, and much so in that time. They would have been unalive for doing so, for even professing themselves to be a Jew, tribe of Judah, Benjamin, or Levi, because we know the southern kingdom was in that land in that time, where the northern kingdom was, but the bulk or the majority of them was already in Aserat. So we already know this time. We already know what is taking place here. We know that this is a custom that is not of our people, but a heathen custom. So with that understanding, you cannot now say that wearing caps is not, that wearing hats is not, wearing caps while worshiping and pray, like how many of these guys tend to do. You have your head covered whilst you are praying, whilst you are preaching. That is not the ways of our people. That is a heathen custom used to keep us down in a lower state. If it's a heathen custom, it's an abominable custom. If it's an abominable custom, it's a sin. If it's a sin, ye shall not do. Because according to the scriptures, yet again, Let's go back into 1 John, because like you'll forget this part. Chapter 3 and verses 4. What is sin, people? Whosoever committed sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. And if you are breaking a commandment by keeping the customs or ways of the heathen, which we know was used to keep us in a lower state, keep us abominable, then you are in transgression of that law. That means you committed a sin. There's no the Bible doesn't have to say wearing caps while preaching is a sin if it's an abominable custom. The Bible doesn't even have to say taking tattoos on your skin is a sin if it's abominable custom of a heathen. Certain things doesn't need to be stated if it's already breaking a pact. It shows how many of our people doesn't do their due diligence to research and misunderstand scriptures. So yes, wearing caps is not our custom. We used to have on head wraps like a turban, but out the center, the cap on the center. That's how it used to be. It's ancient Israel's custom, and it's supposed to persist. However, there's heathens in our land who try to change the ordinances to suit them because they don't want to partake of our people, because they are not of our people. But you want to lean on their bullshit and disregard prophecy and scriptures. It is what it is, isn't it? Your time coming, I know for sure. All right. So I hope this information was clear and very much edifying. All right. We can do a part 3 to this, but I have to go to work now. So I can't even stick. I done later already if I've been a switcher. So we'll have to continue part 3 when we get a chance, or we can continue to via next lesson and then a name for the lesson and continue from there. Alright? So I hope this lesson was edifying. We say Shalom Yesharala, Kal Halalia, Mehawa, Bahasham, Yahawashai, Bahasham, Kakodash. We give double honor to the apostles and prophets and elders of GMS Camp. But I know great minister for the bring forward the 100% truth that I be currently edified under. Shalom to the elect, the tabernacle of David, and I am Brett Zariak saying to you, Shalom.